Welcome back to Our Money. Today, we'll explore the history of the $500 gold certificates. The Legal Tender Act of 1863 granted the U.S. Treasury the authority to issue gold certificates. However, while they were authorized in 1863, they weren't printed until 1865. Although United States notes were the primary form of paper currency after their initial release in 1862, they came with specific limitations. They couldn't be used for settling duties on imports or paying interest on the federal debt, both vital components of governmental operations. This limitation was strategically put in place to encourage the flow of gold into the Treasury and enhance the government's creditworthiness. To address the limitations of the United States notes, gold certificates were introduced. These certificates symbolized actual gold coins stored in the Treasury. Although United States notes were legally accepted for most transactions, they often traded at a discount in comparison to gold certificates. The inaugural $500 gold certificate emerged with the Treasury's 1865 series, commonly referred to as the first issue, and was primarily earmarked for financial institutions. While no known production examples of this certificate are in existence today, a proof note provides a peek into its design. The note prominently showcased an eagle with a shield, accompanied by the U.S. flag on its left and the motto E Pluribus Unum above. Adjacent to this, the Authorizing Act of March 3, 1863 is printed. The note's promise read, "It is hereby certified the $500 have been deposited with the Assistant Treasurer of the U.S. in New York payable in gold at his office to the bearer." The promise would then be dated and countersigned by the Assistant Treasurer. The typical note would sport a vibrant design, highlighted by a stylized and colored number 500 in the backdrop. It would carry a unique serial number in red, located at the upper right corner. The Treasury seal, also rendered in red, would sit at the bottom right corner. The design of this series featured the signatures of Register Stoddard Colby and Treasurer Francis Spinner. On the reverse side, the note is bathed in a golden hue. At its center, 500 is printed, accompanied on either side by the letter D, representing 500 in Roman numerals. The series of 1870, often referred to as the second issue, ushered in a comprehensive redesign and was also distributed for use in banks. The eagle's vignette made way for a portrait of President Abraham Lincoln. Right below the portrait, the series designation is mentioned. Above the image, the Act of March 3, 1863 is displayed. The promise underwent a revision and stated, "It is hereby certified that $500 have been deposited with the Assistant Treasurer of the United States, payable in gold at his office, to the order of." Subsequently, the holder's name and date would be manually inscribed. Beneath this, the note was labeled as a gold note. Intriguingly, these certificates bore the hand-signed endorsements of Register John Allison, the Assistant Treasurer of the U.S., Charles Tuttle, and the Assistant Treasurer in New York. The design showcased two serial numbers in red. One was positioned below Lincoln's portrait, and the other sat above the number 500. The Treasury seal, equally in red, stood out prominently behind the certificate's promise. The reverse of this series was blank, without any design. The subsequent series of 1875, or the third issue, maintained a design akin to the series of 1870. These certificates were primarily intended for banking purposes. The notes bore the signatures of Register Allison and Treasurer John New, complemented by the counter-signature of the Assistant Treasurer in New York. Regrettably, there are no known extant notes from this series. Shifting from primarily bank-focused releases, the series of 1882 marked the first series earmarked for general circulation. The visage of President Lincoln remained consistent. This series is distinguished by its 7 unique variations. The initial 2 varieties displayed the signatures of Register Blanche Bruce and Treasurer James Gilfillan. Serial numbers, printed in brown, adorn the lower left and upper right corners. The Treasury seal, also in brown, occupied the lower center of the design. To its left read, Department Series, and to its right, Washington, September 1, 1882. Above President Lincoln's portrait, the pertinent legislation was cited, under Chapter 290, Section 12 of the Act of July 12, 1882. The note's lower margin identified it as a gold certificate. The promise on the first variety stated, This certifies that there have been deposited in the Treasury of the United States $500 in gold coin repayable to the bearer on demand. The signatures were strategically positioned at the bottom of the note, flanking the Treasury seal. The second variety introduced a modified promise. This certifies that $500 of gold coin have been deposited in the Treasury of the United States. That sum is repayable in gold coin on demand on the presentation hereof at the office of the U.S. Assistant Treasurer at New York City. The placement of the signature shifted to the lower right of the note and incorporated space for the U.S. Assistant Treasurer's endorsement. In contemporary times, only a single instance of the first variety is known to exist, while the second variety remains elusive with no verified original specimens available. The third variation featured the signatures of Register Bruce and Treasurer Albert Wyman. It's worth noting that only one example of this variety is known to exist. It resides within the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank collection and, unfortunately, no images are available. However, it's characterized by a prominent, brown Treasury seal. The fourth variety showcased the signatures of Register William Rosecrans and Treasurer James Hyatt. Its design was accentuated by a large, red Treasury seal in the center, complemented by blue serial numbers. The signatories were placed along the bottom border of the note. Interestingly, the wording of the note's promise echoed that of the first variety. Today, only 2 instances of this variety are known to be in existence. For the fifth variant, in addition to the signatures of Register Judson Lyons and Treasurer Ellis Roberts, there were a few design alterations. The size of the Treasury seal was scaled down, transitioned to a subtler shade of red, and was reformed into a scalloped, round shape. The date, previously seen in earlier issues, was supplanted with Washington, D.C. The subsequent variety displayed the signatures of Register Gabe Parker and Treasurer John Burke, with the design maintaining consistency with its predecessor. The seventh and final variation bore the signatures of Register Houston Teehee and Treasurer Burke. Mirroring the preceding note, the design stayed constant. On the reverse, all the varieties shared a consistent design in a striking yellow-orange hue. Dominating the center was a grand vignette of an eagle, proudly displaying a flag. Above this, the phrases United States and Gold Certificate were printed. Below the eagle, the note's denomination, $500, was boldly inscribed. Lastly, to the eagle's left, stood a prominent, stylized letter D. The last of the large-sized $500 gold certificates emerged with its series of 1922. The design prominently featured the engraved signatures of Register Harley Spielman and Treasurer Frank White, which were strategically relocated to the lower right section of the note. The note underwent various design modifications. While the promise echoed those of earlier issues, new text was added to the left of the Treasury seal, stating, "This certificate is a legal tender in the amount thereof in payment of all debts and dues, public and private." Acts of March 14, 1900, as amended, and December 24, 1919. Directly below this text and adjacent to the serial number in the upper right, the note was distinctly marked as part of the series of 1922. Notably, the acts previously imprinted above President Lincoln's portrait were excluded from this version. The design on the reverse side of this series remained consistent with previous iterations. As always, we trust you've enjoyed this deep dive into the history of the $500 gold certificates as much as we have. Stay curious.